Genesis 9:27, not for now. It is top secret. Genesis 12. And I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and be thou a blessing. I will bless them that bless thee, and him that curseth thee will I curse, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. These verses, when used out of context, appear to be an unconditional blessing upon the advocates of the so-called 1948 restoration. When these verses are analyzed in their true contextual setting, it refutes all the preconceived notions of the so-called evangelical scholars and those of the Z movement who have utilized the above as the fundamental reason for their settlement in what no longer belongs to them. The first fundamental reason why the context of the version of the verses is wrong is on account of the fact that Israel was 12 tribes, and the two tribes that received the birthright promises of national greatness were Ephraim and Manasseh, which translates into the U.S. and Great Britain in the latter days of Earth's history, commencing in the year 1800, when those two global powers entered into the fullness of the birthright, which had been withheld from them for 2,520 years. The blessing was unconditional in terms of the promise that God made to Abraham, since history reveals that the northern kingdom became very evil, and God permitted the Assyrians to take them captive in 722 to 721 BC. What people now perceive as the diminishing power of the U.S. and Great Britain is nothing more than the expiration of the birthright on account of the national sin at the end of the probationary times of the nations, stated by Jesus in Luke 21:24. They shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, till the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. This prophecy, as many are aware, took place in 1980, when the state of Israel declared Jerusalem the capital of a united Israel back in 1980. The real problem with the application of the above prophecy to the present state of Israel lays in the fact that Judah was not supposed to be a world governing power. It was a messianic nation which would give birth to the Messiah. Whereas Judah has never been a global power in its own right. Both Ephraim and Manasseh had to be greater than Ishmael, who also descends from Abraham and Ishmael. And at the present time claims this blessing since there are numerous nations. This should tell you something. The fact is that whoever Ephraim and Manasseh are at the present time, which equals the end of the age, would have to be even more powerful than the Islamic nations. The events of the Balfour Declaration actually reveal this facet of history, since it was Britain that ran the whole show by way of its global power status. And this declaration is giving birth to what is stated in Genesis 9:27. Golden Age, Solomon. Granted that during the Golden Age of Solomon, as a prototype, there was indeed the fact that all the kings of the earth went to Jerusalem to witness the wisdom and splendor of King Solomon's kingdom, as well as the first temple. And this does present a good argument for such a thing to happen in terms of a counterfeit in the near future. Daniel 9. Yet Daniel 9's soon-to-be prophecy presents the expiration of Judah's probationary time, as stated in Acts 8. This being the case, there is no reason for being deceived, yet many are at the present time. So the point that is being made lays in the fact that it was that unconditional element that provided the blessing of national greatness for the house of Israel, namely Ephraim and Manasseh, as witnessed by the phrase, "The sun shall never set on the British Empire." Yet that prophecy was unconditional, but it also has an expiration time frame based on the cursings of Deuteronomy 28, as well as the fulfillment of Luke 21:24. And now in reference to the house of Israel, or Ephraim and Manasseh, which translates as the U.S. and Britain, as well as the world in general, which will be open to receiving the worldwide delusions, which are presented in Isaiah 2, as well as other places in such as Revelation 11, which is the New Testament equivalent of Isaiah 2, Daniel 9's 70-week prophecy. Whereas the original house of Judah was cursed by way of the expiration of the 70 weeks, prophecy of Daniel 9, on account of the fact that eternal righteousness was rejected at the time that it was fulfilled, which was in 31 AD, in reference to the death of Jesus on the cross. Here again, what followed afterwards were the cursings of Deuteronomy 28. Jesus' scathing rebuke in Matthew 23:38. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate, clearly confirmed the fact that the house would be left desolate, and that his enemies would not see him again until the time of his second coming with power and great glory. These two facts clearly reveal that the building of the third temple, which will be built in the near future, does not have the blessings of God, since the true Messiah was rejected. The restoration of 1948. The restoration of 1948 is nothing more than the counterfeit restoration of Genesis 9:27, which basically illustrates the fact that a non-Semitic people did, in fact, fulfill that prophecy in 1948. And the identity is based on the fact that Ashkenaz was a son of Japheth. See Genesis 10, Table of Nations. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, and Madon, Jaden, Dupel, Meshech, and Tyrus. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphath, and Togarmah. This counterfeit enlargement, the tents of Shem, is clearly under the Old Covenant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he will dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. This explains the current scenario which is now taking place. Arthur Kessler tried to warn the world with his book, Khazaria, the 13th tribe. Yet he came under attack as well by way of so-called scientific research regarding the DNA. The claim being made that there was no evidence. Yet it is rather obvious that if there was a conversion process, it would undoubtedly involve intermarriage, as well as the acquisition of Semitic DNA into the gene pool of a Turkic Mongol people. Why the reference to Ashkenaz in the first place as European Jews? This undoubtedly presents a problem for those who cry anti-Semitism, since Japheth and Ashkenaz are non-Semitic. There is a saying that states, where there is smoke, there is fire. The smoke equals the rumors, and the fire equals Genesis 9:27. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. It is rather obvious that the Iraqi Jews are clearly in opposition to the present state and are clearly spelling out the horrors that are being conducted on the Palestine people. So if one group is saying that the restoration is true, and the other is saying that it is not, then who is telling the truth? Well, the answer to this is what Jesus said in Matthew 23, as well as the other things he stated about vineyard workers, as well as what he told the woman at the well. He said the time is coming when worshippers of the Father will not worship him in Mount Gerizim or in Jerusalem, but in spirit and truth. John 4:21. Counterfeit? The answer is yes, the counterfeit will take place and is clearly outlined in Isaiah chapter 2, along with the specific law that will come forth out of Jerusalem city. Zechariah 8:23 is used by many advocates of this mindset, and they don't realize that the fulfillment of these verses is found in Revelation 17:12-16. And go see for yourself who leads the 10 horns. Go see for yourself what Revelation 17:11 says about him, whose skirt is grabbed by the 10 men. Learn the fig tree parable. Jesus warned in Matthew 24 to learn the parable of the fig tree. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when ye shall see these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. And those familiar with Luke 21 are aware the fig tree is referred to occur immediately after the fulfillment of verse 24. When in 1980 Jerusalem city was no longer be trodden down of the nations, the times of the nations have ended. As one might recall, there was an incident where Jesus cursed a fig tree, Mark 11, and that never again would it bear fruit. Yet later in Matthew 24, he tells his followers to learn a certain lesson regarding the fig tree when its branches become tender, green, equals then the summer. 1948, 67, 1980. He who made also mentions all the other trees as well. It's all in reference to when transgression has reached its fullness, when the expansion of the fig tree, and then the events of Daniel 24, as well as Revelation 17:11 take place, and also Revelation 13. Finally, he who made return in Revelation 19, and is revealed as the Word of God, and he comes with the armies from heaven and destroys all pretenders to the throne, especially the eighth, the last one of Revelation 17:11. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, and is of the seventh, and goeth into perdition. Top secret. How can the advocates of the fig tree restoration of 1948 say that America will not be blessed if it withdraws its support of Israel? This is the overmastering delusion, considering the fact that God bestowed the greatest blessings on two specific nations in order to further his work in accordance with the parable time clock of Matthew 20, especially at the current hours of 12 and 3, which mark the arrival of the Millerites and the Seventh-day Adventists. It was during the time frame of the 5 p.m. call, from fulfillment of the times of the nations in 1980, that the blessing of the birthright nations have been diminishing, since they are being led into deception by way of assisting the counterfeit Third Temple program of Isaiah 2, as well as God's response with the two witnesses in Revelation 11. So how can a further blessing be conferred upon the birthright nations who are now using their national resources in order to aid the final deceptions of the evil one? It's happening before your very eyes. Especially when God determined in Daniel 9, by way of the 70 weeks, that the original workers of the vineyard would be cast out, and that the new truth for the last days would revolve around the parable time clock in relation to the call of the true holy nation, royal priesthood workers who would be called at the specific times of 6, 9, 12, and 3, as well as 5, to work in the vineyard of the Lord. Two witnesses. So how will God resolve the problem of the overmastering delusion during the final 3.5 years of the great city where our Lord was crucified? The answer is that God will send the two witnesses, and they will not play around and will point the finger at those who trouble Israel, which are the synagogue of Satan. God states the final result being that the synagogue of Satan will kneel at the feet of the saints and worship them, knowing acutely God has loved the final remnant of the seed of the woman, who kept the words of God's patience concerning eternal righteousness of he who made the first angel's warning. It says, Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews, and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Why? Because thou hast kept the word of my patience. I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. What was kept and held fast? The first angel's warning and eternal righteousness of he who made.